Edward Brown, host of The Best of Investing, here to remind you to tune in this week on Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest is going to be Douglas Lineman. That you're not going to want to miss that show. That's The Best of Investing on Saturday at 8 p.m. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during the show. That certificate's not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon, with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. Do want to make a mention here for Pacific Private Money's new fund. It's not so new anymore. It's been around for, gosh, I guess at least 6 months, called their Arrival Fund. It's a limited time only. Right now, they are paying 10%. It's backed by First Deeds of Trust. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com for more details. And please let them know that you heard about it, heard about their fund on the Best of Investing radio show. All right, today's guest, Nathan Turner, who has been with us before, president of Earnest Inc. Excuse me, Nathan is known as the Canadian Note Guy, having run several businesses, including fix and flip real estate. He discovered mortgage notes in the U.S. in 2009 and has become a leader in the industry in the private investment sector. He is the president of Earnest Inc. and manager of the U.S.-based Earnest Investing LP Note Fund, where he actively manages assets for accredited investors. He is the owner and host of the Diversified Mortgage Expo, which I have been to, a leading annual note conference. The conference has a history of being an educational, no pitching event where those who want to learn, network, and grow come together. Hey, Nathan, welcome back to The Best of Investing.
Thank you so much. So good to be here.
All right. So let's start off. Why notes?
Why notes? I was actually just talking to somebody about the difference between regular real estate and note investing, and why I have given up on being a landlord. Really, the bottom line is being a landlord is a lot of work. There's a lot of work involved. You're always having to think about how much money and when am I going to have to put towards the house to upkeep it, whether that's the roof, the toilet, the floors, the walls, whatever it is. You're always looking forward to the next repair. As a note investor, I'm not the owner of that property. And so it's not something that's really on my radar. I'm always looking at when's my next paycheck coming in? And I don't have to think about setting aside time or money to go towards the next repair. And so that's probably the main reason for me.
And I've been both. I've been a landlord and I've been a note investor. And I like the idea of I'm willing to give up the potential future growth and profits for, the quote security of owning a note. Because you're just the bank basically.
Exactly, and it's nice just to know that I have that as my backup plan in case something goes wrong. That is the collateral. That is the thing that's backing up the value of the note. Yeah. So if I need to tap into that property, I can. But it's not directly my responsibility. And I really like that part of it, that I'm not having to take care of it. I don't have to run it. It's not my business.
And if something goes wrong, then you'll pick it up for 60, 70 cents on the dollar. And then you might have to put some money into it, but you'd have a little bit easier exit strategy. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see here. We've got about a minute before we have to go to a break. So are notes still viable today?
Very much so. It's going to depend a little bit on how you approach it. So for a long time, I got started, like you said, in 2009. Up until about 2020, the name of the game was non-performing notes.
Yeah.
And so that was where we were buying notes where people were not making payments. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of those available. So that was really how you got into notes. Today that shifted. There are not as many of those non-performers available. So performing notes are what we're looking at today. Gotcha. And it's a bit of a different shift. It's a different way of evaluating the note, but it works.
Okay, we'll get into the difference between those two. Here's our first trivia question. And again, as a reminder to Nathan, if you know the answer, don't say anything quite yet. Well, let's see if you know the answer when we come back. And I'll give you a hint. It's in the 1970s. Which 1970s musical band popularized the punk genre in the United States. All right. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate, which is worth about $100. Stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my guest, Nathan Turner. First trivia question: which musical band popularized the punk genre in the United States? Nathan, that's before your time, but what do you think?
It is before my time, but then the name is escaping me, but it's the British band. Sid was the lead singer.
Oh, Sid Vicious?
Sid Vicious.
I don't think so for this one. The Ramones.
Ramones. Oh, I was close.
Yeah. Now, I do want to make a mention here before we start again. For over 30 years, SF Bay Adventures has been the premier boating event and tour resorts for the San Francisco Bay for private events such as birthdays, weddings, smaller groups, or individuals. They can buy tickets to public tours such as the Sunday morning wildlife sales under the Golden Gate Bridge. Visit sfbayadventures.com or email info@sfbayadventures.com to book your adventure. All right, so Nathan, let's get into the difference between NPLs, non-performing loans or notes, and performing ones. And basically, I mean, one has to think that an NPL would, you could buy it at a lower price because it's not performing.
Exactly, yeah. So that's number one. It's a much lower price point. So you can get into that depending on the availability and the timing. That was one of the reasons we got out of the non-performers, is because pricing just started to get too high, where those margins were getting slimmer and slimmer. And you got to think, you don't know exactly how this is going to go with that non-performer. And that's part of the excitement, part of what makes it interesting, but it's also very difficult to predict what you're going to be making on any given note that you purchase. And what I mean by that is, it very well could start making payments again, or it might not. And if it doesn't, then what direction are you going? Is that going to be a foreclosure, or is that a deed in lieu of foreclosure? And even if they're making payments, are they going to pick up and start paying what they were paying before, or is that going to be some kind of modification on that note? Mm-hmm. So it's very wide open, which again is what makes it fun and exciting, but like I say, very unpredictable.
Well, so that's think about all your different potential avenues, and even the ones that you buy, let's say that are performing, they can become non-performing.
They can,
and you have to kind of figure out. So generally, and I know it could be a wide range depending upon the maturity date and stuff like that, but and the note rate. But just as a general rule of thumb, on the performing loans, what percentage of the unpaid principal balance or legal balance are you looking at?
Well, like you say, the range is huge, and the reason why it's so big, there's two main determining factors. The first is, what's the interest rate on the note?
Yeah.
If it's like a 3 or 4% interest rate, my discount is going to be huge because I need to make more than that.
Sure.
If the rate on the note is 8 or 9 or 10, my discount's going to be much, much smaller.
Yeah.
But ballpark, let's say if it's at like an 8% interest rate, you're looking at, I don't know, 75, 80 cents on the dollar, something like that.
Okay. And typically for your non-performing ones, what rate are you looking? Again, I know it varies, but just on average.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it varies. There's all kinds of factors that go into that. Time was also a different thing. In 2010 versus 2016, that was a very different price.
Sure.
But when I first got started, I mean, we were buying, 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. And then
for first mortgage,
we were just getting so cheap. And as time went on, that price went up and up and up. After it got to be more than about 60 or 65 cents on the dollar, the margins are just getting too slim. And
that's on either the unpaid principal balance or the legal balance, because it's actually two different amounts,
Right. And then if you go back far enough, it was actually more based on the property value, because they're all underwater. So if it was, $150,000 owing on the property, the house is only worth $100.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to base it on the unpaid balance. It doesn't make sense.
Of course not. Yeah. And some of these notes, they've been unpaid for years, and the legal balance is so much higher than the value of the property. But then there's Go
It's
ahead.
another factor. Oh, I just say that's another factor. It's something else you got to look at.
Yeah. Are there states that you avoid?
There are a few ones that I avoid. For me, it's mostly just New England, just that whole region. So New York, New Jersey, anything with "new" in the title. That's not true. New Mexico's great,
Yeah.
but just kind of that northeastern corner there.
Is it because
They've got some,
foreclosures take too long?
yeah, and as much as we try to avoid foreclosure, it is part of what we do, especially with a non-performing note.
Yeah.
And so when New York has a timeline of over 2 years to do a foreclosure, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's a
Yeah.
long time to be sitting
Unless
waiting for your money.
unless you buy it really, really, really cheap and can hold on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah.
some companies I know that they actually like New York because most companies
Yep.
avoid it, and so they know how to work the system. But you just never
Sure.
know with some of these. It's like some people love land deals, right? I don't like
Yes.
land deals because there's just especially here in California, there's just too many hurdles and environmental issues that you have to deal with. So it's
Right.
get kind of hurt on that. Let's see here. Questions when we come back, because we're going to go to another break here. We do want to talk about your Diversified Mortgage Expo and
Okay.
what people can expect if they want to sign up for that. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that they can learn in these events for sure. All right, so
Right.
here's our second trivia question. What percent of the human brain is water? Now you don't have to give me an exact number, but if you give me roughly the number, well, we'll be impressed with that. For the audience, call 888-912-1190. The first caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate again, which is worth about $100. So it's a nice little gift that we're giving away here. The trivia question is, what percent of the human brain is water? And when we come back, we're going to continue on with Nathan Turner, Diversified Mortgage Expo, and also Earnest Inc. I like that. That's a good name. All right, audience, stay with us. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing one more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Nathan Turner. Our second trivia question, what percent of the human brain is water? What do you think, Nathan?
I'm going to guess somewhere around like 70-75%, something like that.
Yeah, 73 to 85%.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Not bad. Very, very, very good. Very good. Okay, so now you're the president of Earnest Inc., which is manager of U.S.-based an LP fund, note fund. Tell us a little bit about your fund.
So the fund, we just got started a little over a year ago, where it's an opportunity for accredited investors who don't have the time, that are maybe interested in this business, but don't have the time to learn it or do it themselves.
Okay.
So it's a place for them to deposit money, whether that's cash on hand or IRA funds, where they can start collecting an income coming in from notes without having to do the work themselves.
And
So that's
performing
the idea of it.
notes is what you're
Right.
What again, with no guarantees or anything like that, what's your target distribution rate to your clients?
Yeah, so we pay an 8% annual return with quarterly distributions, and people can either take the distribution or keep it in and have it compound.
Okay.
Either option works.
And do they participate in profits too, or do just get the straight note rate?
With performing notes, there's not really a bump at the end, so it's just you're getting the note rate. So it's that steady 8%. That's about as much as I can say.
It's interesting. I had this one note that we didn't expect it to. We actually bought it, and it was an NPL. And
Right.
we thought, oh, okay, this one, it's a good NPL. Well, son of a gun, if the borrower didn't start paying, and it's like a 4% rate, and it's locked in for the next like 30 years, and it's I mean, that really kind of affects your return. Now, the thing is, if the guy sells the property or defaults, that's a different story. But otherwise, you have to just sort of expect to hold on to it for quite a while.
Yeah, and we had all kinds of situations like that. I had one where it was non-performing, and then they started making payments at 11%.
Oh,
and I kept trying to convince them, look, you're paying way too much. Like, go back to the bank, get refinanced, and they didn't want to. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
yeah,
I'll take your money,
yeah.
but you can get a much better deal because, as you know, the sooner I get paid off on my note, actually the more money I make.
Yeah. 'cause
So
you're
in that
paying it just-
situation, it's mutually beneficial. I get paid off early and make more money, and then they're paying much, much less at a much lower rate.
yeah.
But they just wouldn't go for it. It was interesting.
Yeah, maybe at some point they'll talk to a friend. So I got to think that's probably a lower dollar amount of a note. Yeah, it's not really
It was, yeah, it was lower. It was under 50,000. Eventually they did it after, it was probably 3 or 4 years, but they finally, I was able to prevail against on them and just say, look, just really, banks were at the time were like at a 3 or 4%. I'm like, guys, you're
Yeah.
wasting your money. Go and refinance and pay me off. Eventually they did.
Now the thing is, they have. I mean, there's always other factors. Maybe they don't have the income for it or whatever. But one of the challenges I know with lower yield or lower dollar amount notes, especially in the NPL space, is when you have to start paying costs and attorneys and all that. You have to pay the same amount whether it's a $500,000 note or a $50,000 note, and sometimes there's only so much you can collect on that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. This is when you're buying a non-performer, you do try to kind of guess what's going to happen. You have to have some idea of where it's going to go. And in that case, I was pretty sure that they were going to start making payments. And then again, my whole game plan was to get them back on track, making payments again, and then have them refinance at a bank. And I thought that would be an easy thing. And for whatever reason, they just did not want to go to a bank.
Wow. Yeah, but if you're getting 11% like on that one, I mean, it's okay. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world.
That was great. Yeah, and I paid less than that, so my return was much higher than that. But I just found that really interesting. They just
how much due diligence can you do on these notes? Because you're not the originator of the notes; you're buying them in the secondary market.
Right. Yeah, I get to look at everything that the originator put together, so that helps a lot. I get all the whatever paperwork they put together, application forms. If it's gone through an RMLO, like a residential mortgage loan originator, like it should, then I get all of those documents. So I get a pretty good handle on the borrower and who they are. And hopefully that's enough information to know, whether they're going to be making payments over the long term. Yeah. And that's our goal. I don't want to take over property. I would much rather just deal with the note. Sure. So even if there is some kind of default and they're in trouble for some reason.
Do you ever talk to the borrowers before you buy the note?
Not before. No, I can afterwards, but before that's a no. We're not supposed to be talking to them, just for privacy reasons.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And how much time do you generally spend on each file before you make a decision?
Before we're buying? So I start by doing some online research and just seeing what I can see based on what's online. Before I purchase anything, I'll order a title search and I'll have a BPO, so a broker's price opinion. I'll have a realtor go and check out the value of property. So we're putting all that together. It's, maybe anywhere between 2 and 5 hours, we'll say, of actual like sit in front of the computer time. And there's more that goes into it, but you get the idea.
All right. Okay, let's get to our next break here. Here's our last trivia question for this segment here. What is the most affordable state in the United States to live in? All right. Call 888-912-1190. The first caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. What is the most, or which is the most affordable state to live in? All right. Stay with us. The Best of Investing. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Edward Brown here along with Nathan Turner. Third trivia question. What is the most, or which is the most affordable state to live in? What do you think it is, Nathan?
I'm going to guess Alabama.
Close. Mississippi.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's funny because even more so now because they just eliminated their income tax.
Oh, did they? Oh, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
It's going to be, as I understand it, they just passed a law on that. So now, how big is your fund? You said it's about a year old now. How big is your fund?
So we're raising just $5 million. So as far as funds go, it's relatively small. Okay. We'd like to grow that to about 10 million, and then that's good. I don't actually need it bigger than that. That's a happy place for me.
Okay, yeah, because you can the notes are probably going to flip over, I would think, or If they don't, then you just have cash flow where you're paying 8% to the clients and you guys are yielding, 10, 11, or 12%, right? So you kind of
Right.
keep the spread on that.
Yeah.
Not a bad
Yeah.
way to go. So tell us a little bit about Diversified Mortgage Expo.
So this is a conference that I took over a couple of years ago. This will be my third year running it, but it's actually the 10th anniversary for the conference itself.
Oh.
And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for people to come together and to network and to really expand their knowledge and their network base so that they can do more deals. That's the overarching theme of this whole thing, is get here so that you can do more deals. That's the bottom line. We want people to be able to do more business because they've been able to come to this conference.
And so it's novices as well as experts come?
It is, yeah. It's been interesting. We do an informal survey of everyone who's there at the beginning of the conference just to get an idea of who's representing. And I've been surprised at the spread of people. There are just as many brand newbies as there are people that have multi-million-dollar funds. And I think that's great, because that's what a great cross section of people that can come together. And the person that's brand new can still teach the guy that's been doing this 20 years something that maybe they hadn't thought of, or a new technology, or who knows what. But they've got something that they can bring to the table as much as the person that has a wealth of experience.
Yeah, I went to a conference one time, and something I had learned about was buying, so many months worth of payments from the seller rather than just buying the whole note. Partial, they call it, and I thought it was actually a pretty good strategy, because you can control the whole note, but you're going to be locked into a specific number of payments.
Yeah, exactly. And this year what we're doing is, for the first day especially, we're concentrating on that idea of diversification within notes. So notes is already a pretty niche industry, but even within notes, there's all kinds of different approaches you can take. So we've got people talking about how they are approaching notes in different ways, bring different ideas to the table so that we can really blow people's minds, so they can be sitting there and say, I thought this was this. And we're going to start presenting different things that maybe they've never heard of before and never considered. But it's still within notes.
How many attendees do you expect?
Last year we had about 225. We expect that to increase, so somewhere between 250 and 300 is the expectation.
Yeah, because when you get like 800-900 people, it's just a little bit too much. Where's it being held and when?
So it's Nashville, Tennessee, and it's May 2nd and 3rd. So coming up here in just a few short weeks, and we're super excited. It's going to be a really good one.
How do people, if they're interested in learning more, how do they get a hold of you?
If they want to learn more about notes in general, either way, if you go to my website, earnestinvesting.com, that's EARNEST, earnestinvesting.com, there is more information about notes, about my fund. There's a link there over to the conference, Diversified Mortgage Expo. Or if you just want to look at the conference, you can look that up as well. But online is really the best place to get all that information, and then to set an appointment to talk to me.
Great. And then how do you make sure that you're secured on a note that you buy today?
Any note that we're buying, I buy with a minimum 25% equity spread. So if the property, for easy numbers, if the house is worth 100,000, the loan balance is 90, the most I'll pay for that is 75. Okay. Because I want to make sure, in case of, if there's something that goes wrong and I end up having to take back that property, I want to make sure there's enough of an equity cushion in there in case there's a dip in the market, or there's work needs to be done, or whatever the case might be. I want to make sure that I'm well protected.
And do you get title insurance, or how does that work to make sure that you're buying what you think you're buying?
We can. I don't always, but depending on the situation, we will go ahead and get title insurance. We've actually got a title insurance person coming to the conference talking about the benefits of doing that. And so that may change my mind, and maybe I'll do it more often. But
I don't know what that would cost for. I know it probably depends on the dollar amount, but I'm just wondering. It's like, because I've done origination of notes, and you typically go through title insurance. Like you're buying a house type of thing. Wells Fargo does a title. So I'm just wondering, how do you do it in the secondary market like this?
More often than not, there's not title insurance, but there are cases where it can get confusing. Say, for example, where somebody passed away and now there's probate. Maybe you want to look at it in that case where there's 5 or 6 kids, and you don't want somebody coming later and laying a claim that can just get messy. So it's worth it to get in that kind of a situation.
Well, and then sometimes, you get, let's say Wells Fargo sells it to X hedge fund, hedge
Yeah.
fund sells it to Joe Blow hedge fund, and then blah, at one point, like, how many down line do you go
Right.
where you go, you know what, this is just getting too confusing?
Yeah. Same kind of thing. Like if it looks like it's going to be at all complicated or messy, then yeah, that's something we'll definitely consider.
And then do you I don't know how easy is it to buy, let's say, seller carryback notes from someone?
It's pretty easy. My ideal seller of notes is somebody who's looking at doing this as a business, where they've acquired a property, whether they fixed it up or not, if it's in decent enough shape, they sell it, collect their down payment, and then they've created this note, and then they're looking to cash out. And
Gotcha.
then so I can be there to cash them out, and they can go back and do it again, and we can do a lot of business.
All right, audience, stay with us. We're going to be right back with some closing comments. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Nathan Turner. So Nathan, when you have someone who, let's say as a business, you were saying they are fix and flippers. So they bought a property, they fixed it, and now they've sold the property, but they've carried back a note.
Yeah.
What I don't know how often the seller of that note, got any down payment at all from the buyer of the house. You're usually, is there like a range that you're seeing?
There is a range. I prefer there to be at least a 10% down payment.
Gotcha. Okay.
Again, I want to make sure that the person living in the house feels like they're in it. Feels like they've got some urgency to make those payments over time. So they've put enough of a dollar amount as a down payment where they feel connected, they feel urgent about making sure that they don't lose this property at some point.
Yeah, because otherwise, if they have very little in it, then you might end up owning that property again. And does the seller of the note make any kind of guarantees to you, or he just sells it and says, okay, you're on your own, Nathan?
Usually it's on your own. Again, if it's somebody that's doing it more as a business, I have gotten guarantees like that, where they say if something goes wrong in the first year, I will take it back and I'll swap it out for another note of equal or less of value, kind of thing like that. That's not uncommon. That does happen. More often than not, there's no guarantees.
Do you have any horror stories?
Oh, sure. So my worst one that still is not finished, I go back to court next week on this actually, is one in Chicago where it was a foreclosure. I bought it because it was already in foreclosure, and it finished right before COVID hit. And so then I couldn't really do very much of anything. What ended up happening is we had somebody that decided that they wanted to move in without me knowing about it. And because it was COVID, evictions were off the table, and it's been years and years and years. And here we are 5 years later, and they're still in there, and we're still trying to get them out.
And that person had nothing to do with the property to begin with. They were just
no. Yeah, they just moved in. They did a bunch of work on the house, and so they have been trying to represent in court that because they've done all this work on the house, then it makes it theirs. Of course, that's not the case, but it's continued to drag.
There'd still be, you're still owed money on it, but
right?
Or something like that. Otherwise, you know what? Why don't you just show up at the mayor's house and say, you're out, I'm in my house now. Of course, they have to go to work. They have to go to work first so that the house is empty temporarily for a few hours.
Right.
It just kind of drives me crazy how these laws, and I know New York kind of be that way too. Chicago's
that's my worst.
Doesn't have the word "new" in it, but somehow you got that. Yeah.
That's my worst one. There have been others that are not quite so drastic, but look, this is a real business. You can lose money. That's a real possibility. So, there is knowledge, there's experience that you need to be able to do this correctly. Can anybody do it? Yeah, of course. but I would highly recommend getting some training done. And I'm not somebody that is going to teach you, so that's not even a plug. That's just
No, but,
I
but,
highly
but they can learn a lot at your Diversified Mortgage Expo, though.
sure, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. And
You
again,
can find a teacher there. There you go.
what's the website for that again?
Diversifiedmortgageexpo.com.
Nice and simple. Okay, you ready? Here's our thoughts for the day. So, being a little older, I'm very fortunate to have someone call and check on me every day. He's from India, and he's very concerned about my car warranty. Isn't that nice of him? And I am so sick of and tired of my friends who can't handle their alcohol. Last night, they dropped me 3 times while carrying me to my car. Those good guys. I can't believe it. All right, audience, tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.